Welcome to smstechnopark.com course, Mobile Apps Development by using iOS and Swift Programming. Welcome back to Apple Mobile Apps Development by using iOS and Swift Programming course, Part 2, What do you need to start iOS programming? Why should we focus on iOS apps programming? Is it only the programming to develop apps for Apple device? Anything else? Yes. iOS apps programming for iPad and iPhone devices only. You can develop apps for Mac OS, Apple Watch, and Apple TV. iOS is an operating system for iPhone and iPad. Hence, you will use iOS SDK to develop iPhone and iPad apps. You will use watchOS SDK to develop apps for Apple Watch, tvOS SDK for Apple TV. This tutorial focuses on iOS apps development for iPhone and iPad. Initially, developer would have to create two different applications, one for iPhone and another one for iPad. If you had a very good apps idea for iPhone and iPad, you would have to design, development and deploy the application to the application for the single apps idea twice. Recently, Apple was introduced universal apps concept. A universal app is a single app that is optimized for iPhone and iPad devices. From developer perspective, they don't need to develop two different versions of apps for iPhone and iPad. They can create a single apps in Xcode, both iPhone and iPad. Xcode makes design and coding simple for universal apps. But the whole process is not automatic. It involves more work to optimize the design to the differences in device screen size. We will see this in more details in auto layout tutorial. Creating a mobile app is a fun and interesting experience. Before starting the iOS programming, you must know what are the tools are required to build an app. To start Apple iOS development, you must have Mac desktop or laptop. You should get your Apple ID, Xcode installed in your Mac, Apple developer program. This is not mandatory, this is an optional. Apple devices to test. This is also optional but good to have. Mac desktop or laptop. Of course, you must have a Mac to build iOS app. You must get a Mac with an Intel-based processor running on Mac OS X version 10.11 or above. Mac computers are available in the market with the various options such as iMac, MacBook, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro and Mac Mini. All these have different memory size, storage capacity, screen size. You can choose any one of the Mac according to your budget, but your Mac must have at least 4 GB memory to run application smoothly. Next, you should get your Apple ID. You will need an Apple ID to download Xcode, access iOS SDK documentation and other technical resources. Especially if you don't have Apple ID, it will not allow you to deploy your app to real iPhone or iPad for testing. It doesn't mean that you must have real Apple device to test your apps. Xcode has device simulator to test your apps. Simulator allows you to rapidly prototype and test builds of your app during the development process. Installed as part of the Xcode tools, Simulator runs on your Mac and behaves like a standard Mac app while simulating an iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch or Apple TV environment. Think of the simulator as a preliminary testing tool to use before testing your app on actual devices. Now, I will show you how simulator is working within Xcode. This is my sample program. This is run button to execute the apps. This is where you can select your simulator. We will see more about the simulator later in this tutorial. Now you can click run button to execute your apps. You can watch these apps. The simulator has started. It looks like your device where you can test your apps. The difference between your simulator and real device is touch screen. You can only use your mouse instead of touch because the simulator is running on your Mac. Anyway, you can test your full apps functionality in the simulator. You will not face any issue on this. Now, I have demonstrated the simulator how it is working with your Mac. Again, the only difference in the simulator and real device you will feel real touch effect, which is not happening in the simulator. Simulator, you will have to use your mouse to make your apps functionality work fine or not. The next tool, Xcode. Xcode is an integrated development environment that is IDE for Mac, iOS, watchOS, and tvOS. Xcode 8 includes everything you need to create amazing apps for iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, and Apple TV. It contains a code editor, language compilers, iOS SDK, and all tools to develop and deploy your apps in the store. You can download the Xcode from Apple developers website, that is developersapple.com/download. Once you go to the site, you will be prompted to enter your Apple ID and password. You can create your Apple ID from here, or you can sign in by using your existing Apple ID and password. You will get the page where you can download and install your Xcode. Programming languages used in Xcode. There are two major languages used in Xcode for apps development. These languages are Objective-C and Swift. These are bundled with Xcode. You will use either one of the language to develop iOS apps within Xcode. This tutorial will focus on Swift programming language to develop iOS apps. It is the recommended language for iOS apps development. Then you will have to enroll in the Apple developer program, but this is not mandatory process. Enroll in the Apple developer program is optional, and you will have to pay $99 to become a Apple developer program. You don't need to enroll to start your apps development and test. When you go to submit your apps in the Apple Store, you must be enrolled in the Apple developer program. As of now, you have learnt what you need to start iOS apps. Now, let us see what do you need to learn to start iOS apps. In brief, it comes down three things. You will have to learn Swift. Swift is the recommended language to develop iOS apps, as well as this is the brand new language in the market. Then Xcode. Xcode is the development tool for you to design the app user interface, write Swift code, and build your apps. Then iOS SDK. iOS SDK is the software development kit, provides the software development functionality for developers to make their lives simpler. The SDK comes with a set of software tools and APIs that gives you authority to develop iOS apps. For example, if you want to develop audio apps, the SDK provides functionalities to control your audio apps. If you want to develop browser-based apps, the SDK provides built-in browser which can be embedded with your apps and so on. Okay, we will learn all these tools later in my tutorial. Next, we will see why should we learn iOS apps and what are the learning tips. This is we are going to learn in next tutorial. Goodbye.